Insights from science tech startups. Learn from experienced founders and experts how to build a successful startup. You are listening to the Working with Startups from Science podcast.
Hello, welcome to Working with Startups from Science. I have the honor to speak with Rajiv Vaid Basaiawmoit. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Rajiv.
I can just say it's Rajiv, but that's fine. Rajiv Vaid Basaiawmoit. Yeah, happy to be here.
Wonderful. It has been a long time we haven't seen. We are here in Europe. In cold Europe, and I'm lucky to talk to you about your journey as a teacher, as a researcher, as an innovator in the realm of entrepreneurship education. The first time we met was also here in Berlin at the Falling Walls Science Summit. And you connected also to Bartosz Kaidas, my partner in play in Mannheim. Greetings.
Yeah, hi to Bartosz.
I think all three had the same idea. We have to meet again and do an episode together. And here we are.
Yeah. Oh, this is really cool.
We want to talk about your 3 stages, your secret Coca-Cola formula, like sometimes I say, the 10, 20, 70%. So first part, long-term, your journey, then what you're doing the last 1 years and what you're doing the next years, and what are, the pitfalls and potholes in the execution as well. So let's start with your journey. You are from India, Shillong, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's where everything started. Did you have some entrepreneurship or family members that were very agile and active and building companies?
Of course, I come from a family of let's say doctors, in the sense that my mother is a doctor, my siblings are now doctors, and not only just doctors, all of them are eye specialists, so specialists in the eye. So, and then you would say, okay, so we are coming from a family of professionals. My father was from he worked as an engineer in the air conditioning. He had, of course, his own business, so he was a contractor running sort of businesses in air conditioning, heating, and then my mother was also running her own clinic at that time, and then working for the government as well. And then slowly over time, I've seen her transition from being this sort of government employee to running her own business, because trying to grow her clinic into let's say a bit more in-depth eye care center, and today that center is a hospital. So in that sense, I have been part of that, I have witnessed that journey. And you could say in that sense, I've also seen my mother being quite entrepreneurial, because she's never had any formal business training. It's just, learning on the go, and learning while doing. So that's been sort of course, quite inspiring to see. Though I would say, I think I left my hometown in, I would say, 1999. That's when I left my hometown. So it's been quite a while. And I left for further studies, of course. So I went to the south of India to do my master's.
Wait. This is just to sum it up. It was really from the get-go into science and technology. Health, medical applications for eye therapy. So it was bustling and hustling, and technology-wise also very interesting. And so
that was the exposure.
A learning mindset from the get-go, right? Where I'm going, where is my family going, where are we specialists?
Mm-hmm. So that was the exposure, at least. But then I think, if I should really say, I think, of course, like any other, a lot of Indian parents would like their kids to become, professionals, and especially, if possible, try and follow the similar professions that they do. And my mother, of course, wanted me to be a doctor, and so to be in the medical line. And I did try. And in India, it's a very competitive exam, and you keep trying again. If you don't get the first year, you try the next year, and so you sit for these entrances. So basically, you're studying the whole time, just trying to clear these entrance exams. Super competitive, competing with millions of aspiring students to join the medical profession. I did try, I did sit for it, but then when I failed at the first, I wanted to try something else. While my mother said, you know what, just wait for another year, try again next year. But in the meantime, why don't you just do something else? So why don't you just sign up for a bachelor's? And so I just looked around for some interesting bachelor's. And there was a very new field. I think we were the second at that time. I'm talking about 1996 now. It was called biotechnology. And I was like, "Ooh, that sounds very cool because it's a mix of mix of technology, and so let's get into that." And again, the idea was, okay, we're just experiencing it. It was just a stopgap, 1 year, maybe next year I get into medicine, and then I'll go into medicine. And that's what started my journey into science, let's say. And I entered biotechnology, and then it grabbed my interest quite a bit. And then I didn't want to leave it, so I did not sit for the medical entrance exam the next year anymore, because I was like, "Ooh, I actually enjoy this much more." So I told my mom, "Sorry, mom, but I don't want to pursue the medical line. I think I'm finding it a lot of fun in this biotechnology." And the other thing that really kept me interested in that was, I used to watch a television series in the 90s that was very popular called The X-Files. And I don't know how many of your audience might
Yeah,
know The X-Files, but
Joby for sure here.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then we were seeing these X-Files, and I used to watch it religiously at that time, and I really was always driven by the fact that, oh, that could be cool. I would maybe like to be a forensic scientist or a forensic detective like Mulder. And that's at least how it started, the imagination element. And biotechnologies gave me that possibility. And one of my first projects, I still remember vividly until now, was a project on DNA fingerprinting. And I was like, "Oh, that's really very cool," So yeah, that's what started my journey into science, and then continued, of course, from there.
Well, so already multiple sources of inspiration,
Mhm.
and yeah, this openness to go sideways to
Mhm.
see which lanes are open, where you can apply your skills.
Mhm.
And you were quite good, so you also became employed research trainee
Mhm.
quite early on, and did this project. And what happened next? So at one moment you started to fly. You
Yeah, I mean, so I after I did my bachelor's, the most obvious thing is, of course, to continue with your master's. I had to leave the nest, as such, the nest of Shillong, my hometown, and I went
Now
to the south.
tell us something about Shillong. Why is this a
Ah,
special place?
okay. So, well, Shillong is it's up in the mountains. It's northeast of India. It's a kind of a remote region. It has a border with Bangladesh, and not too far away with a border from China or a border from Burma. So we're quite east frontier in a way, and of India. Very different than, let's say, most of India, or as we call it, mainland India. It's up in the mountains. I've always been a mountain guy in that sense. I love the hills, and it's it's known as the state is Meghalaya, which basically means city of the abode of the clouds, which basically is because it's very cloudy. And I think at that time we also had an acronym called Shillong is the Scotland of the East, and that's mainly because we had a lot of weather like Scotland, which is basically a lot of rain, a lot of fog, a lot of clouds. So we had that kind of weather, and that's why I grew up with. It's also known for the world's heaviest rainfall. So we get the world, a lot of rainfall.
I
And
remember as a kid, I was in warm rains as a kid. When it was raining as kids, we run out and
yeah,
it's pouring.
yeah. So this is the kind of rain that is just heavy rain all the time, and that's how I grew up. I mean, that has changed a little bit now due to global warming, but it's always been there, and still rains quite a lot, of course. But yeah, it's also famous as a rock capital of India. A lot of rock musicians from all over the world come up. to this little place, and yeah, so I grew up with a lot of rock around as well. And then I think it's also a cultural capital. We are from a hill tribe called the Khasi tribe, and this hill tribe is essentially a hunter-gatherer type of tribe with a family of with a background of archery, I think I would say, as the key hunting skill. And I think that probably explains why I'm, without ever having done formal archery, I'm actually not bad at picking up a bow and arrow. So, yeah.
Great.
So,
It's just, I mean, again, so many points. You know, there's I met Alexander from K2 Accelerator, from Cyprus as well. So mountains is also an important visualization for some entrepreneurs, climbing up the mountain, up and down, Sisyphus, and also what you talked also about the immersed in nature. Sounds like an amazing place, really. And archery as well as something I'm always thinking about combining.
Yeah, he trying to hit the bullseye, but you also need the discipline. Actually, archery is a very disciplined sort of sport because you need to. It's not just about hitting the target, but it's also about getting this kind of mental space in which you visualize the target in your mind before you see it with your eye, kind of. So I think a lot of those things could be very useful in entrepreneurship as well. But yeah, I think that's where
the training ground you have there, really.
Yeah. So, though I think I never picked up archery, but I mean a lot of my, let's say, fellow citizens who do that, we actually have it as a sport. It's called a global sport. I mean, it's a global sport in itself, but we have it as a betting sport. Like, you know, like you have in here. I don't know, in Germany, do you have like the horse racing, right, as a betting sport?
Soccer, football, yeah.
Yeah, and here we have archery, where you have villagers who basically will shoot at targets, and people make predictions as to how many arrows will hit this target, and that's what people make small bets on. It's a very interesting sort of a cultural phenomenon.
Okay, wonderful. Just okay, we leave Shillong behind.
Yeah.
A lot of culture, a lot of sports, a lot of nature, and we move up in un cran, we say in French, but you went to the next level then.
Yeah, so I could just quickly say, how did I enter Europe? I was actually I went to the south of India to do my master's first. It was a master's in biotechnology, so I continued that stream. It was, again, a competitive process where I got selected in 2 institutions, one in the north and one in the south, and I chose the south because it was the top-ranked biotechnology program at the time in Madurai, Kamraj University, which is in the south of India. And apparently we had lots of great scientists there who were producing a lot of interesting sort of knowledge. And at the same time, I also had learned that our prior, let's say, students who had gone through those master's program, 90% of them were ending up in the States. Like, they were going to the US because it was a very high program. They would only take 20 students, for example, per year in that. So the intake of the program was quite small, but it was kind of like an elite program. And then you would go into the US because US was also a hot biotechnology destination. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I got excited by the field of bioinformatics as well. I started working on that. And then I think one of the years after my master's, I continued working for a year because my supervisor, my master supervisor there, said, let's finish this project we had started. So he found some funding for me to continue for a year. And
what was the topic of the project and who was involved?
Yeah, I mean, he was a Professor S. Krishnaswamy. He was a protein biophysicist, kind of, and a bioinformatics guy. And he used to work with a lot of, structural biology. That's the field, actually. So where he was trying to work with, proteins, trying to structure proteins, finding out how proteins look like, and at the same time also using bioinformatic tools like computational tools to do predictions first, so that you could predict how it could look like, and then you experimentally try to prove how does it actually look like, right? So
25 years ago.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So and so it was a fun field to be in. and it is also the place where I met my life partner, and I think that's she was also studying at that time doing a PhD under the same supervisor, so we connected over there, and yeah, and then I think when I met her, we of course knew that careers are going to be important, and you have to focus on your career as well, but it's something that we had agreed. We see where life takes us, kind of. And what happened at that time was I was in Bangalore for a conference presenting a poster on my work on, I think it was porins, which was basically porins. It stands for membrane proteins. It's strange, I still remember it so many years ago. But yeah, and then when I was presenting it as a poster, there was a German postdoc from Hamburg, from the DAISY, which is the Deutsche Synchrotron. And he was walking by, he looked at my poster, he said, "Oh, you have very interesting work." He started talking to me, and then he basically said, are you interested to come and work with us? And then I said, yeah, well, what does it mean, work with you? And he said, well, I have a professor who might be happy to take a call with you, and let's see if we would be, because I've just told him about you, and he's interested to talk. Do you want to have a call? So I think they fixed a call the next day. I spoke on the call for 30 minutes, and a day later, I had the offer letter to come to Hamburg. So
he saw you, he looked into your eyes, you talked a little bit, and he was like, yeah, this is global talent, this is gold.
Yeah, so that's how it started, and my girlfriend at that time, she got an offer to go to New Zealand, so she ended up having a postdoc in New Zealand, also in the field of structural biology, and she decided to move there. And I was actually also trying to say, maybe I can move to New Zealand, maybe Australia. But then when this offer from Germany came up, it's about, this Indian saying, one bird is better than two in the bush. So the idea was, well, you have an offer. We don't have anything yet for New Zealand, even though proximity would be great. But we're like, okay, we'll see how it works. So I took the offer and I said, let's go to Germany.
But it's always tough. Any Western country has tough immigration laws and conditions. You must kind of be prepared for all options and also stack some money besides to actually be able to do the jump, right?
Yeah. But I mean, in the sense that I didn't have to do much. I mean, I don't know, was it because I had an offer letter from a lab? I had a university from Hamburg, sort of a formal invite. So my visa process was a breeze. I think I got the visa in I don't know, 45 days or something like that. And then, and then I was told that I would be paid a salary as a research assistant or a research associate, which would cover a lot of my expenses. So it wasn't something that I had to put up front a lot, except just cover for the visa costs and stuff, and the travel, of course. But then that actually worked quite fine. And then I was in Hamburg for a couple of years until I then got an offer for a PhD in Denmark. And that's how I moved from Hamburg to Denmark, and that's where my scientific journey then continued from from a master's into a research associate, and then a PhD in still similar field. From structural biology, it was similar in Hamburg, and then in Denmark it was biophysics. So it's kind of similar still, but slightly more different. But I still think the Hamburg synchrotron experience was really cool. It was, as a young scientist coming out from India, it's one of the best places you could probably imagine to get into, because it's, what I told you about, we are trying to study the structure of the proteins as a master. So we're trying to see how it actually looks like, and you use X-rays for that. And Hamburg at that time had one of the largest X-rays. We used to send samples from India to Hamburg or other places around the world, where your sample of protein would get hit with X-rays, and you get the data sent back so you can analyze it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in the place where we do this, right? So that was actually very cool to be at. And so just physically experiencing the synchrotron, which is the synchrotron is where you sort of, it's like the CERN, people might know CERN, where
Absolutely.
you have, electrons circling around at high speeds. And that's what generates, those collisions from there would generate X-rays. And that's why we were there at a high-powered X-ray source. And so it was a great place to be. I learned a lot of new techniques, learned a lot of new things. I even picked up a bit of German that I think, unfortunately, because I've learned Danish now, I've forgotten it. But as for your audience, I always say when I come back to Germany, there's still some words I can.
Ja, du kannst.
Yeah. And I say, ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch verstehen.
So you understood the German mentality a bit. You learned the European transport system. Hamburg, discovered Hamburg, and then it was time to move on and do further science.
Yes.
And
and then in Denmark, we went into Denmark. It was a very different sort of PhD proposal. I had a very broad problem space, and I even asked my supervisor, what am I supposed to do in this big problem space? And he was like, I don't know, it's your job to figure it out. And that was very interesting, kind of fit my creative problem solving mind quite a bit. And then I entered into that, and I came up with, I think if there's one thing my PhD supervisor remembers was about me, is that he found me to be a very creative person, maybe sometimes a bit too creative, because he was like, you need to a bit, also implement some things a bit more, in a standard way, and sometimes just park your creativity, as he used to call it. But it was tough projects, tough going.
3 years, right?
3 years, yeah. PhD is 3 years. Yeah, and molecular mechanisms of corneal dystrophy. It was just a coincidence that it happened to be, in the end, that project. I started with something else related to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, proteins in that, and then ended up with this protein which causes protein aggregation in the eye called corneal dystrophy. And it was a funny connection because, like I said, I came from a family of eye doctors, and I was suddenly studying these mechanisms of corneal dystrophy, which can lead to blindness. And then I was able to combine some bioinformatics skills that I picked up in my master's in India, and at the same time the skills that I picked up in Germany, and then advance it with the new skills I picked up in Aalborg in Denmark, which is where I was, really up north. So it's almost a northern tip of Denmark. And yeah, we actually did some very interesting work, and I ended my PhD on a high note. It was a tough journey, but I still remember the main censor who came and was there at my PhD defense basically said, this was a very tough project, not easy for a lot of PhD students to overcome, but you have overcome it. And I will just tell you one thing, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. So that was actually his note.
We only have to survive.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I think a lot of these I take as life lessons that have then sort of gone into me and shaped my identity, and also remind me of things. So whenever things today are not going well, I always reflect back to those days and say things are not going well then as well. But then you always come out of it, and and things are actually then much better than you think. That's been my journey. And then from science,
and enabled us you then also to go into teaching, like also leading other talents.
Yeah, so when I came into Denmark, Denmark is quite open. It allows a lot of changes. I think when I finished my PhD, strangely enough, like I said, I was offered a job in Hamburg, right? Similarly, I was offered this PhD position. I didn't really have to apply anywhere as such. And after my PhD, I did a couple of years of postdoc, which is sort of a normal journey for a scientist career if you want to become the root of a professor. But what was interesting is, I think at the time when I did my PhD, I only thought my end career would be professor of biophysics, right? So similar to that of my supervisor. But then we had the financial crisis, nothing like a crisis that breaks your thinking or breaks your trajectory. And the financial crisis ended our funding, the 2008 financial crisis, which some people might remember, which meant we were not having enough funding. And my supervisor at that time said, Rajiv, I really would like to continue working with you. However, we don't have any funds left. So what I would suggest is you go back to India. If I get funding, I will get you back. And that was too much of a risk that I didn't want to take. And that's when I told him, I said, no, I'll be around. I'll just try and figure out something, what we can do ourselves. And I would say, and both me and my, by the way, my wife in this journey, I got married during my PhD. My wife got a position in the same lab. So she moved from New Zealand to France first. And then after a postdoc in France, in Montpellier, in the south of France, she then moved to Denmark as well. So once we were together, we decided, okay, now we can get
So you
married.
were an astronaut couple,
Yeah,
moving across
yeah.
continents.
Yes, and just staying in touch, and then just letting our career pathways determine where it is go. By the way, in science, this is very well known. It's known as the dual body problem, and that's for two scientists as a couple to find a job in the same lab, let alone the same city, is considered to be very, very difficult. So, but finally we managed it, and my supervisor was very helpful, and then we just continued from there. And then from Aalborg, I moved to Aarhus for doing my first postdoc, and that's when we settled into Aarhus, which is now my current city, where I'm currently kind of based, and
By
where
the
I
way,
also
there are
teach.
now dual career officers at universities in Germany,
Yes.
that cover this
Yeah,
help along
yeah.
the way. Yeah.
I think that's a problem space. They probably noticed it and now want to help others, and this is really a great thing. So yeah, so suddenly I was in that situation where in 2010, 2008, where we lost our jobs. So 2009, let's say, we started doing freelancing and started doing science writing, where we were writing for all the scientific knowledge we had. We were writing blogs, articles, journal for popular science articles. We started writing because we had some writing skills. And then I also was contacted by investors in our freelance journey who wanted to invest in biotech startups, but did not understand the science behind. And then they asked us if we could sort of break down the science for that. So we would do that as well. So suddenly I was doing a lot of different things linked to science, of course, and then also things that were not linked to science. And that's why I normally say to people now, if you can, and if you want to really, shake things up, take a 1-year break from whatever you do and do everything else that is different from what you have done, right? So, and for me, it was even more challenging because it was a 1 year of, let's say, unemployment, and people sometimes look at unemployment as a barrier, and I actually was not taking it as a barrier. I was like taking it as an opportunity to learn new things.
Oh, we can call it a barrier, but it's a barrier which you can define yourself. It's like a Escher picture, this picture where you have barriers and you think you're in prison, but they're actually, if you look at it from another angle.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, and I think if I think back, I did a lot of voluntary activities. I used to do something called moss graffiti, basically going around the city planting moss around walls just to do artwork with that. I was part of voluntary groups. I did a lot of voluntary work for sustainability. I think it was something that I was interested in anyway, keeping a city greener. And then I was writing movie reviews for Chinese movies for the US market. So, and then I was doing many different other stuff. But it was all just freelancing, trying this and that. And we had our little consulting company on the side, and that's when we started. 2010, we started Biosymfonix. But it's also when we got the idea that, okay, I'm starting a company, but maybe I need some business skills. I heard about the MBA program at Aarhus University. At that time, it was the Aarhus School of Business. And I said, okay, let's see if there was an open call and walk in. So just to hear about the program. And you will be surprised as a scientist, and that also a very nerdy scientist. At that time, I really did not know what an MBA stood for. So Master in Business Administration. And I just went to the MBA program director and asked him, hey, I'm from science. Is this something I can do? And he said, yes, MBA is a general business degree. Anybody can do this. We don't have a lot of science people, of course, who do this, but in general, you can do this. And it's a 1 year full time. And I was like, okay, let's jump into it. I applied for a scholarship. I got the scholarship. And then I decided to do the MBA. Surprisingly, I was the only scientist in the cohort. And I think I had people from oil and gas, people from banking, people from different industry sectors that were there. It was fun to be in, and I ended up that journey by topping the class. So I ended up as the top of the grade, and I was surprised that it's something that I could really do, and it was almost shaping me for a consultancy journey into big consulting companies like McKinsey,
Totally.
BCG, and those were the career options that were opening up for me. I was applying to a McKinsey interview. I got selected for the final round, but then my
Cheers to the
professor.
colleagues.
Yeah,
There's so many also in the startup world from the Big
yeah,
Four.
yeah, exactly. So, and I was actually almost going in that direction when my professor at the business school, used to work in HR. She told me, I think, Rajiv, if I should be honest with you, you will not fit the consultancy world. And I was like, why is that? And she said, well, I think one, you are too creative, and two, and in consultancy, you might need to be too bound, and you might find it too binding for you. And she said, and I like your analytical mindset that could be very useful in research. So why don't you continue in academia? And I was like, oof, okay, let's see. And then she said, if you would like, I would like to offer you a position as a postdoc in my lab, and why don't you work with me? And this was suddenly in organizational psychology and human resources, which is like so for a postdoc from biophysics to suddenly get a position there as a postdoc with no PhD in business, right? So I basically said, can I do this? And she said, yeah, you have a PhD, no? I said, yes, but I have a PhD in biophysics. I don't have a PhD in whatever you do. And then she said, no, you have a PhD, and a PhD is a way to think. It is not the degree that matters. It's the way that you think that matters. And then I said, okay, if you are confident in me, then I'm confident in learning these new things. And then I joined her, and that started my business career in academia, let's say. And I ended up working for her for a year or so, and then after that, got into the Center for Entrepreneurship. Again, just by meeting my MBA program director over a cup of coffee, and he said, we have a new opening for a consultant they're looking for in business development. We think you could be a good fit in entrepreneurship. Is that something you're interested in? And I was like, yeah, why not? And the Entrepreneurship Center was at the Department of Humanities, or the Faculty of Humanities. So they had a more sort of, a much more humanities view on entrepreneurship. And that was something that I also really enjoyed. And suddenly my repertoire of reading also increased. So from reading scientific journals to business journals, I was now reading philosophy journals, philosophy articles, Spinoza and others. And suddenly that opened my world in a totally different space. And then a cool entrepreneurship educator that I had joined, he took me under his wing, and he said, why don't you just shadow me and start teaching entrepreneurship? And then I will, show you the skills. So I shadowed him for a bit. He even gave me a guest lecture to do in his course, and I started doing that.
That's a special hack, is shadowing. I'm really fond of job shadowing.
Yeah.
Leaders, professors should let that much more happening.
Yes.
Like, of course, it's also hard to have tutors and scientific personnel, but to really support them in their journey to be able to connect the dots at different levels with talents, to really cascade the team and to make it like inspirational for everybody involved. This is like a special skill, and it starts with job shadowing. Let open up your inbox, open up your challenges, your tasks to others, so that they can jump in.
Yeah, and that's what I ended up doing. And I think what was interesting was already in the second class that he was running, he came and told me in my feedback, he said, Rajiv, I really enjoyed the guest opportunity I gave you to the lecture. I think you can do this. And the next day he called me, he said, why don't you run the whole class? And I was like, what do you mean the whole class? And he was like, yeah, you take my entire session. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He said, I think you're a natural, so just do it. So I just did it. And the next year he signed over the course to me, and he said, this is your course now, because I think you do it better than I do. So kind of that was how it started off in a way.
So
and
trust from this moment of he observed you, saw the quality is right, people, the students liked it.
Yeah. So and I think so from that journey, and this was in, I would say this was 2013, 2014. I would say so, almost 10 years ago. When we were 26 or 12 years ago. And then when I started this and I got started teaching together with him, I was still teaching together with him, but I was just running more independently. And then from 2015 onwards, I had my own courses. And if you look back 2015 to 2025, 10 years from now, 2025 October or September, I was awarded by the Triple E Awards, which is the Entrepreneurship Educator Forum Awards, as the Global Entrepreneurship Educator of the Year Award. And that kind of was very, it brings it into full journey, but that journey from starting in a completely different area and then excelling in it, to be recognized by peers and others that this is something that you're good at. And I think, and I've always maintained, I have done teaching not because I had to, but because I want to. And it's in my current position as well, I'm the head of innovation and entrepreneurship at the science and tech faculty at our university. I don't really have the mandate to teach. I don't have to teach. I mean, if I just said I'm not wanting to teach, I wouldn't have to. But I actually want to teach, which is why I stay with the teaching role. I maybe don't have the course admin role, or I'm not, but then I'm more of a guest, let's say. But I'm still doing it because it's so much fun, and it gives me so much pleasure to teach.
And yeah, there's always I like frameworks. You dealt it, right? You have defined it.
Yeah.
You have eliminated any quality issues. Then you automatize it or give it to others so that they can grow, and you're literally free to jump in to give some special sparks to the group.
Yeah, and what I do now is so my role is now curriculum designer. So I design the curriculum, I let others to run it, and I am there to maintain the quality and also just to spark inspiration in different spaces, and then allows me to scale this model, which is the embedded entrepreneurship education model that I have, which is specially targeted towards training entrepreneurship skills to scientists. So it's kind of living up what I experienced, now packaged in a sort of a much more coherent journey, let's say. And all of this is then bound with some special creativity that I bring in, that of course comes from play and games, which I think I've started using a lot in my journey. So since 2014.
When you saw the barriers, you went into mosh art and discovered, you go from granular, really small micro projects to the big structures, organizational structures, and you bring all the diversity of young entrepreneurial scientists, that come from different disciplines and different backgrounds. Besides, you've also built since 2011 the Biosymfonix company. As you call yourself, Innovation Jedi Master.
Yeah.
So this includes also a lot of reflection. I think there's a lot of thinking involved, and you go back and forth between your academic role and your entrepreneurial role, and it helps both worlds, right?
Yes. People sometimes ask me, how do you manage this? Because I have a full-time job as the head of innovation, and I also have a full-time job as Innovation Jedi Master in my own company. And people say, how do you manage two full-time jobs? Well, the one way to manage two full-time jobs is that they are a very core part of each other, in the sense that when you deliver for one, you're also delivering for the other, in that sense, right? So that definitely helps. I mean, I do very distinct roles and and keep things very distinct as well. But at the same time, there's a lot of overlap, both in inspiration, both in ideas and stuff like that. So a lot of classroom innovations that I'm now coming up with then transition. I mean, they are given to my classroom very easily, but then they can transition into our company for products that could benefit others, right? So and that's kind of let's say the journey. And then the classroom, as of now, acts as a great testing bed to of course get feedback from students, and I always listen to feedback, because I think it's a very important part in any entrepreneurial journey, is improve your product based on the feedback that you get, even though you might be the expert and you know a lot, and yes, you bring the expert knowledge that you want to bring in, but listen to the feedback as well, because they also have something valuable to tell you.
this is a special place as well. You discovered Aarhus, and
Yeah,
it's for you like a second home or first home,
yeah.
and you're going back forth. What makes this ecosystem in Aarhus so special? What makes it, even as a mid-sized city,
Hmm.
it's not a world city, but
Yeah,
still
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of creativity, clarity, and structure there that I see,
yeah.
that you are able to do this.
Yeah, Aarhus and well, Denmark in general has always been very open-minded, like allowing people to change disciplines easily, allowing students to try different things. I think that has always helped, of course. And this idea of, if you don't try it, you won't know, that also comes from here. And I've met a lot of young people that were always willing to try different things, and who also showed another very important part, which was we need to care about others. We need to care about the environment. We need to, and I think that element built with the growth mindset that you need, of course, for economy, these two then actually had a very nice balance. And then I was like, okay, so my MBA, for example, they taught that, how is it to make money, and it's like where you learn quotes from like things like Milton Friedman, who talks about the business of business is business, or the goal is just about making money. But then on the other hand, you also learn all these social environmental goals that are as important, and are almost enshrined. These are, I would always say, these are European values, right? We see, and then balancing these values becomes a skill, right? So because if you go for
What's the
one or
point
the
of the
other too
purpose?
much, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. What's the point? I always think the long-term objectives that we need to have,
mhm,
it cannot be just piling up that material.
yes, exactly. So and then, so I would say even the type of entrepreneurship that I teach is what I call ethical entrepreneurship, in the sense that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. What you need to figure out is, whatever you're doing, what's the impact it's going to have? Is there going to be some negative impacts? Think about those negative impacts as well, because as entrepreneurs and as creators, you need to think everything that you create, is it going to be some benefit? Because you can create a lot of bad stuff as well, right? And creativity can be there as well. So so you need to be a bit careful about what we create as well.
Yeah, one industrial designer said, "We are the worst profession in the world,"
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
find funny.
yeah,
It's so
yeah, yeah,
beautiful design,
yeah,
IKEA and Apple and so on, but
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
it's a lot of it's not circular.
It's
So
not
we have to.
circular, and yeah, exactly. So I think this is where, and then I, by bringing in play, I was able to, and Aarhus again allowed me to be a lot of my playful self, which I think I'm thankful for, that I could try this out without judgment. I think you always meet barriers, of course, because you will always meet conservative mindsets, but there's still enough backers, and this goes back to my director of the Center for Entrepreneurship, or who basically also, when I first came up with an idea in 2014, I want to create a game for entrepreneurship. He basically said, okay, go for it. Here's the budget for it. Yeah, to get people who can back your idea at that early time is actually quite needed.
Yeah, you need the mentors. You need those
Yep.
the launch pad people that can help you along and see your ideas worth trying.
Yes.
And you had those as well there in
Yeah.
Aarhus.
Yes, exactly. And that's really helped. And then I understood. I think it wasn't just the fact that I came up with an idea, right? So this is very important to distinguish, right? So because yes, I may have an idea, why should someone fund me, right? Or why should someone give some budget to it? You need to demonstrate that you are doing this consistently, and consistency is important here. And I think what I had was one consistent thing from my CV, and it may be even there on my LinkedIn profile. But if you look in the year 2011 to 2012, I think I took part in a lot of competitions, in a lot of challenges. But one of the common factors in all of these entrepreneurship challenges I took part in, and I think I won at least more than half of them, was that I was using play and games as a way to solve problems. So I had a track record that my boss at that time could see, the director of the institute could see, okay, he's not just saying that he wants to create a game, it's just a new idea. He's actually done this before, and he's won awards for it. So he does know what he's talking about. So I think I can trust him. So that's what I mean, right? It's not, because then otherwise, if I just say that, well, just come up with an idea and just be lucky that someone funds you, I don't think it's just that.
Yeah, and it's 2019, 2020. Like you showed already resilience, crisis resilience in 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
You built it up. How was it there in Denmark then when COVID hit?
Yeah.
A lot
So
of startups really struggled and
yes,
were
and
surprised.
we were no exception, but I would say it hit us harder than most other startups because we were working in the physical realm, in the sense that our startup, which was, so Biosymfonix started as a consulting journey, then we created Biosymfonix Edu Games in 2016, and as a sort of really as a channel for windows of our product, right? So that all our educational products, which are essentially board games and card games, to be implemented in a classroom. So that's why the name Edu Games. And when COVID hit, it basically meant 2019 was our best year in sales. We had the best sales year in terms of number of games sold, and then 2020 it just dropped to zero, right? So it was basically going at a speed of 100 immediately to zero in 2020, and then we had a COVID winter that wasn't 1 but 3 years long, and which meant that suddenly uh, I tried to transition, React used some of our funding surplus that we had by that time to create digital versions of the products, but they didn't do well. I mean, they actually failed, because that's just another discussion for another time. But where we had a physical product, we were trying to digitize the physical product, and it did not come out the same way. However, during COVID, I was involved in another project where we designed a digital product from scratch, and that worked. That worked as a digital product. So I think designing from scratch for the goal that you have, that would work, but just porting something did not naturally work. And I think you would say that COVID should have told us, or forced us to just completely drop our company goal and start making digital products. However, we did not do that. We decided in many ways, we decided to say, okay, what's the opportunity here? What's the silver lining out of this? And the silver lining for us was we have time. Until 2019, we only had one product. We were just selling one product and one side product. By the end of COVID, we had 5 products, and we had started work on the 6th one. So we basically used the COVID phase to come up with new ideas, test them out. Just me and my wife working together with different ideas, and we had the time and luxury that normally you don't get in a everyday sort of busy schedule life, because it's you are always running, doing different things, and suddenly
So
we
you
just had
did
time.
portfolio management basically. You had your garden with different products that failed, that were stopped, and you said, okay, this is not moving, so we have to move and sort it out and
Yeah.
look what could work now in these times.
Yes. So I would say we did, yeah, it was, I would call it, we actually did real gardening, is when I did some real world gardening as well, and then also gardening of our projects and products, seeding new products, and also coming up with new ideas of existing products, how to make new spin-outs of them, for example. And our entrepreneurship game, which by 2019 was already reaching was doing quite well. We spun out a version of it for the research market called the Granted game, which is essentially a research grant writing game. That was also during COVID that we started doing that. We came up with an intellectual property game to teach people about patents during that, and then an open innovation. And so we were doing a lot of that.
Just short this with the IP game, because it's really funny.
Yeah.
I think even Wall's YES program, Young Entrepreneurship in Science, checked it. It's digital, right? So
It's digital.
Yeah, and it's a time travel machine. Basically,
it's a time travel machine. Yes. I can tell you very quickly about it. What it does is I work together. So I don't have digital skills myself to make coding for games. So we work with a Dutch company that basically designed the game for us, Grendel Games, and but we were the consultants in terms of the bridging the content of intellectual property, because they didn't have knowledge of intellectual property, right? So and we acted as the bridge, because while you had the professors who knew what they want to teach about intellectual property, and you had game designers, they're completely different worlds, and we acted as the bridge. And especially, I think my wife was very, very critical here, because she was the one who sat with the game designer on a daily basis to kind of figure out what is it that we want that they could do, right? And then understanding constraints from both sides. And then with a lot of creative solving problem, we came up with an escape room idea where Leonardo da Vinci is our protagonist in the game. He travels forward in time in his time machine. Of course, it has to be Leonardo. Who else would it be? And then ends up in a modern but defunct patent office. And in this patent office, he is curious, because curiosity is what always drove Leonardo. And this curiosity is a cool skill. So he goes around trying to find different things in this patent office, and assembles and figures out how a patent looks like, which is what you are doing for him in the game. And then it's kind of with a little bit of a time pressure, which we also changed around because it's an escape room. But we innovated a count up timer instead of a countdown timer, because the aim was that you read a patent, and countdown timer showed us that you don't really read. And what was interesting is our game designer told us, if you change it from a countdown to a count up, it's no longer an escape room. And I'm like, that's a very limiting definition of an escape room. So I think you could see here that I'm not limited by definitions, but limited by but rather what works. What we have to look at is what works, and what's our goal, what's driving us, what's our aim here. And our aim here is to make sure people read patent. And if they don't read a patent, then the game, no matter how fun it is failed for me. So
yeah, there's a lot of research on this as well. Like it's really, the mechanism has been also analyzed in Nuremberg, for example. The two Nuremberg, shout out, they have a great museum of board games, and they said, okay, we need to find out the patterns of games. So they took all the game guidelines from all the games, put them into a database, and now even have really a system to analyze it. They also give courses. And I was so fascinating when I was at the University of Potsdam, in the project Innovative University Potsdam. We had a project called Public Campus, where we did citizen science participatory research. And I myself also, as a gamer and seeing life also from the lens of playing with nature and with systems, started a serious game lab and really got much into this. And I think it's also very helpful in terms of entrepreneurial education. And you are surfing this wave since a long time, basically over 15 years now.
Yes, exactly.
So where are you now?
Okay, so where we are now is we have now transitioned the idea that we have been doing a lot of different games, but a lot of our games are now collaboration projects. So rather than just us coming up with new ideas, we are actually asking, because until now that's what the games were, we're actually inviting people to come up to us with the problems, hopefully also with some budget, and then approach us with the problem that they have, that we would then use our experience and our sort of expertise in games to come up with a game-based solution for them. And this is actually what led to the latest collab project that actually already started during COVID, but then ended up in a new product, which has also forced us to create another, let's say, branch out of our journey. So remember I told you that we had edu games, and edu games is what we've been doing, and I think we have been doing a very good job, because we have, especially for example the entrepreneurship game, we have reached more than 5,000 learners across the world, over 100 institutions across 30 countries or more, and it's a growing list, and it's a lot of it through word of mouth. But then these were products that we came up with. We came up with those ideas. We came up with the problems that we were, for example, the entrepreneurship game, I was trying to solve a problem in my classroom about how to get students to experience uncertainty. But of late, we are asking, okay, we will still keep coming up with ideas of our own. I mean, we cannot stop this, of course, but I think we're now open to people coming up to us with ideas and saying, can you do this for us? And that is a big change. And there we had a professor who's actually already in Paris, who came up to me and said, why don't you make a game for me for negotiations? And I basically asked her, first of all, do you need a game? And what's the challenge you're trying to solve? So what's the challenge that you have? And her challenge was that, well, people don't really know negotiations. They just, they don't know it as a formal skill, and they just try to shoot from the hip, and they don't do the preparation. They don't read enough. They don't prepare enough. So that was at least the challenge. And we started working on it, and we looked at the entrepreneurship game. If could we take something from there? And again, we tried for a couple of years, and nothing really clicked, And I think there was a time where we had this feeling that, okay, we were trying to fit something into existing tools and it wasn't working. And that's when I told this professor, because she also wanted a shortcut, the professor who contacted us initially. And I said, it's not working. I need to design this from scratch. So we need to completely, ditch the old ideas. Are you willing to be on board with this? And she said, yeah, no, that doesn't matter. So we said, okay. So we dropped everything, started from scratch, and me and my wife and her started working sort of really with a fresh white paper and started coming up with things. And I think my wife was the first one who came with the first sketch, and then we developed it from there and tested it. And when she came in the first test, and I think we've actually released a series of videos on our Instagram that shows the history of this latest negotiation game. This game is called Pactopolis, and it's a game that teaches about negotiations and sustainability. But if you look at the 2023 version of the game and you compare it to the 2025 version of the game, you would never imagine that they would look that different. Right? It's so different, and that just shows you how design can change depending on how you keep evolving this, right? And again, it's not us. Also, we also did not imagine this is how it's going to look like. This is evolution, right? So things evolve, and I think this idea that entrepreneurs have the idea what they're going to build 5 years from now is a complete myth, right? It's about taking the small steps, trying to solve a problem today, listening to the feedback, taking into account this is the goal, and making sure that your goal, which was, I want them to learn negotiation skills, I want them not to take shortcuts, I want them to learn how to prepare for negotiations better, remembering these goals and not forgetting these goals, just like in the IP game where we said it's about reading the patent. Similarly, we stuck to these goals and kept improving, and that's resulted in a very cool game. But what was interesting is, I would say our entrepreneurship game was our best-selling game, but this one I think might even beat that. And I hate to say it, because the first game is always like your first child, right? It's your first love, and you really think that that's the first thing you've created. But I hate to say it, that I think the new one might actually beat that one, and it is forcing us to pivot our journey into a new journey where Biosymfonix Edu Games is not going to stay as Edu Games, but it's now going to be called Biosymfonix Game Nights. So we are adding a new chapter, a new sort of direction, a new portfolio, I would say, where we are entering mass market. It's no longer just educational games, but we are targeting casual games. And it's not something that we want to do, it's something that our audience wanted. So it's my students who basically came up to me and said, can we not buy this game from stores? Can we not get it? Because I really want to take this game home, and I can't access this game anywhere except in your classroom and all institutions, and we want to take this home. And that's when we got the idea that, okay, there seems to be a much bigger demand than we thought. And for the entrepreneurship game, which is why it was popular, I would say I would have maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 that would say, can I take this game home? But now with the latest game, we have 9 out of 10 who want to take it home. And that tells us that there's this market. So it's the market demand that drove us to this direction. So our new sort of title, we've just released the logo and positioned ourselves. It's called Biosymfonix Game Nights, and it's a play on words. It's nights as in to have fun on a game night and a game evening, but also nights with a K, because we now take our play hat on and we put a night helmet and make fun with that as well. So that's the idea with that.
Great. I mean, in business, many people say, okay, we have to put on a mask and play. There's a lot of these aspects in it. There were so many interesting points here. The thing that you need partners that hold your hand, that continue to trust you. When you say, okay, the quality and the objective should be the North Star or the center of this small universe, and we have to spin around it and get to the perfect quantum formula so that it clicks for the audience, and the audience gives the feedback. So it's also moving back and forth. DevOps, not developing and operational testing, and it's a wonderful community. It's very big in Germany. It's growing worldwide, and I think it's great to bring it to the people. And I just wanted to add, because I left it behind when we talked about the digital games, and then we come back to that point that you want to make now, is also that in Potsdam, in Berlin as well, we have now a house of games that is being set up in Adlershof, and it's also with the collection from the DKREC, the Digital Game Research Center of the University of Potsdam, who collected over many years all kind of digital games under Professor Dr. Sebastian Möhring. Let's shout out to him. And so there's a big community in Germany, and you also have a lot of fans in Germany. And you mentioned two things: the pivot from edu game to serious game, because edu game was kind of like 90s, edu game were boring, were in the classroom, kids didn't have fun. Now it's changing a lot. New tools come in, and it's opening up to the power of play and to take roles, serious roles, like serious role play. You can sometimes in games, that you really play this character. You start playing a character.
Exactly. I could add, the reason for this change is actually very strategic. We could, of course, we still have the parent company Biosymfonix, and then we have Biosymfonix Edu Games, and then now we have Biosymfonix Game Nights. But you could have just released the game under Edu Games. Why not release it under Edu Games? Why go after new branding? Because remember, new branding means new cost, new trademarks, all of that, right? So there's a lot more administrative work as well for this change. But the reason for doing this is strategic in the sense that we know, or we got to know from the audience and from the market, that the word edu games is seen a little negatively. Now, I'm not here to correct the market, because they think that if they think that it is, then that's what it is, because they think that edu games basically means games for education, which is equal to boring games, which is not as fun as the cool games that we get on a store. Even though I would say the games we make in the edu games category are cool games, and a lot of people have fun with them, and they say it, right? But because of the serious element of it, or the serious purpose, some people think you could be selling us a boring game. And that is why we thought it was important to transition from the name, so that we communicate to people that we are also in the business of making games that are fun, and just a game where the learning objective is there. I'm not removing the learning objective, but it's secondary. And the idea is you should have fun and smile. It's similar to the Ig Nobel Awards, which are the in sciences you hear about the Nobel Prizes. Then you have the Ig Nobel Awards, whose goal was to make you laugh first and then think about the science behind. And this is something similar in that sense, that we want you to have fun, really think this was really cool, and then at the back think, oh, I think I've actually learned something here.
Yeah, you can force the instinct in the emotions. You enter through the emotions in the game, through the play and what's coming out of people.
Yeah.
And it's diversification because of distribution, and that the customers tell you that they want to have it distributed this way and not that way.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's important to both listen to your customers, but also know the pulse of the market. And here, this is where, when we were in trade fairs or Messe, for example, and as soon as you see people walking away and they say, oh, Messe, okay, we walk away. And similarly, we hear the word right now, negotiations. We heard people in Essen Spiel, we were there last year, Essen is the world's largest board game fair, right? So we are looking forward to come again next year. So again, look for Biosymfonix game nights if people from Germany are wanting to visit us there. But you are going to sort of see people who walked by us and basically said, "Oh, what do you do? Oh, negotiation game. No, we don't like negotiations," and they walked off, right? And without even asking to know more, because they're basically limiting themselves from what they see or hear or know as a definition of negotiation. So we are trying to challenge that as well in our marketing campaigns that are going to come out, where we're going to say, this is a negotiation like no other. It's a negotiation game like no other you have played, because we need to counter people's preconceived notions.
Yeah, and take them where they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
So amazing. So Biosymfonix, it's also a mix of synthesis, bio, and phonics. So you take also this bio aspect, organization psychology, how is it ergonomically, how is it cognitively taken in, what is at the end of the game, what's the experience, and you had some amazing experience. People really like going into deep
play. I mean, this latest game, Pactopolis, is actually a game that has surprised us because it's a long game. It's a 3 to 4 hour gameplay time, which is long for most board games, but I'm able to keep, or the game is able to keep their attention for that long. And when I mean it, when I say they keep their attention, it is attention where they don't check their phones. Some people have forgotten to drink water that's right next to them. I have to go and tell them, take breaks, because they're so engaged in it. And that's really great to see as a designer, of course, that people are engaging so well with it. But it also tells us that physical components, physical products can make a change in people's minds if you design it for that, right? So it's not just, it's not just digital products that can do this. Physical products can also do it. And now more so, I think we talked about COVID and how that could have forced us to change our sort of direction. We're actually glad we did not, and that we actually stayed in this, because now we are seeing people wanting to get away from digital addiction or digital sort of tiredness. Like, people are just tired of phones and tired of scrolling the whole time, so they just need something else. And if you give them something disengaging, they're very happy with that. So I think that's the feedback that we have had. And the best example I have is we had a fire alarm break one of the gameplay. We were 2.5 hours into the gameplay. A fire alarm breaks out in the building. We had 10 of us testing the game, students, most of them. We rush out of the building because you have to vacate the building. It took us 45 minutes before we could get back in. So that's 2.5 hours plus 45 minutes. That's way over 3 hours. And then I told them, okay, I had booked them for about 3 to 4 hours. And I said, guys, we are not going to finish this game in the next hour or so. So let's just cancel. Let's build a new play date and find another time. Let's reschedule. All of them vehemently said, no, we want to finish this game. I want to see who's winning and how we can make good deals. So they didn't want to leave even after this 45-minute fire break disruption. And that just showed me that, okay, there is potential here. People actually want to play and want to finish this. And that is why we want to bring this to the market and to the wider world, because I'm sure you will be curious as to how your evening will play out with something as engaging as this.
Wow, that's the power of Pactopolis, the power of play. People, check it out. We will post it also in the show notes, definitely.
Yep.
And this is coming up this year. You will keep us informed. You can also check the website and find the newsletter to get all the infos. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get also the German version hands.
Yes.
Also for senior people, because I talked also with Max Senkels from Institute of Electronic Business, and he also started early a startup for seniors, and we have to educate the young and the older as well, because in Germany there's this mentality before, like, you are educated in school, maybe university or in the company, and then your learning journey kind of is ended, and you just work till retirement. And now we have this like engagement, empowerment, activation, active learning, and this is kind of for everybody, right?
Yeah, it is for everybody. And we have tested all age groups. I mean, of course, my primary playtest group was always students of about between 20 to 30. But I have seen now, we have tested with young families. By young, I mean 14 plus. And it has worked in that age group. And we have also tested with seniors, 75 plus, and it has also worked with them. I mean, I just had a playtest last weekend where we played with some friends and elderly friends, and they also really liked it at that age group as well. And with young people as well, they understand the game. Maybe some of the nuances of negotiations they may not be able to, let's say, fully capitalize or fully strategize or around, but they can still play the game, and that's the more important element, is that you're able to play the game. And then of course the idea is the more you play, the better you can become, the more you can become strategic, the more you can learn expertise. And I think it is also a unique game that I think is not there in the market in terms of mechanics, because people have always asked us, is this a competitive game or is this a cooperative game? And my answer is, it's neither and it's both. And that's not an easy category to sort of fit in. So I think it also shows us it's always, people always want to box you or relate you to existing games, but we are, I think, maybe a bit different category in ourselves.
Yeah, that's right there, because it's similar to in the world of business. When you're in an ecosystem, you never know who's really your partner and who is also has its own agenda, which is more important, the partnership or the single agenda. So this is really to polydexterity or ambidexterity, choosing between discovery and exploiting, or operations, development and operations.
Yeah.
Is really key here. And it's good to have a system, a game, where you can have a safe space to engage in these difficult decision-making processes, which are essential to understand the world which humans are creating here.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's why we are planning a Kickstarter, because we think we can launch and appeal to a wide range of people. So we are planning to launch this game right now as a Kickstarter on the 1st of June. That's kind of the tentative date. It may be June or July, but that's the tentative date we have. And and then hopefully by the next Essen, which will be in October, that's the idea, is that then it's ready, then we can give it to you already either there or at least around those dates where you can already have your hands on it. So that's at least the idea.
Yeah. Will it already be in German this year? Or?
Well, yes, we have reached out to manufacturers. So we have fans from Germany and France, actually, who have showed the biggest interest in our initial sort of exposure of the game. And that has told us that we definitely need both a German version and a French version. So I think this will be published right from the start in these two versions.
Awesome. I'm really keen to either meet you there or get my hands on it. We will do an event together here in Berlin. When you do your road tour.
Yes, we are planning some road tours, visiting game cafes. We are actually already in 2 weeks' time heading to heading to Cannes at the Festival of Play in Cannes, in the south of France, where we are going as authors and going to showcase the game there. So any of you, if you are in 2 weeks' time, the last week of February, if you are in, well, you'll probably hear this later, but that's where we're going to be. But we are going to be a UKGE in the end of May, which is the UK Games Expo, which is kind of the Essen of UK. And then we will be at Essen Spiel. We will also be at the Origins Game Fair in the USA in June. So yeah, basically trying to sign up for as many events as possible so that people get the experience. And like I've said, when the easiest way for me to talk about the game has been that if you experience it, you will not leave it. If you talk about it, you will want to play it. But if you just walk by it, of course, then you just walk by it. But I think we have really seen that people who talk to us really want to sit down and play, and those who sit down don't want to get up. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a really lucid game, like really, really well for connecting brains and trying different tactics and scenarios.
And it's very interactive. So the idea is that we wanted games to be more interactive, so you talk to each other, because I think it's important that people learn how to do this. And we have kept two very important elements: learn how to make deals with each other that are beneficial for everybody, and at the same time, including, we give voice to the unsaid, or the voice to a person who's not on the table, and in this case it's the environment. So how do you give voice to an actor who's not on the table but you need to take care of? So the game tries to do that as well.
Yeah, that remembers me. There was a serious game lab, the developers of Kyoto, which is also the conference, where you had different positions, some really bad positions, and it's always about making money without destroying the world, because you never know who's chasing what, and it has similar mechanisms, right?
It has similar mechanisms, but I would say in our game, you will realize very early on that you need money to grow operations, to grow things, but at the same time, you can only grow by ensuring that others are also growing and not damaging the environment. So that's kind of at the same time, because if you damage the environment, you will also inhibit your growth. So that we have actually built in a cycle that really adversely impacts you if you do this. And it's actually very real world. It's just that happening in a smaller time scale. I mean, we don't realize this, but if we damage our rivers or our air, we may make a lot of profit right now, but if we can't live in that city anymore, then it's pointless.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a fine balance to navigate this like interconnected, interdependent world, and exactly. It's good to do it while in dialogue with different people. So it's great. So would you recommend it also to startups? Which game would you recommend, or which order would you recommend if our startup teams needs we need a break, but we need to continue thinking about how we get the next deal?
Yeah, I mean, if you want a game for ideation, then we have our entrepreneurship game, eShip Navigating Uncertainty, is really a good one for just ideation. So coming up with new ideas, understanding uncertainty. For startups, that would really work quite well. If you are not a startup but more sort of in science and want to use the same thinking but in your science instead, then I think the world of grants, or the grant writing game is the one for you, because it helps you sort of come up with a grant proposal idea rather than a startup idea, right? So those are the two main ones. IP game is for really learning about intellectual property and understanding patents in a short. So if you're short of time, then that's really the one to try out. And also just to improve your IP literacy. Maybe you don't know what words in patents are used and stuff. And so that's one. And it also has innovation in that game, because it wants you to understand a patent structure but also come up with a new one. And this, I think, startups can use if they are afraid of IP, or if they need to figure out how to design around existing IP, then this game can give you ideas for that as well. So I think startups can also use that one. And the latest one, Pactopolis, I think with the focus on negotiations, it's really about learning deal-making skills. And if there's one thing that a startup has to do all the time, it's making deals. So I think it would be very useful to just learn how to make deals, in the sense of, our aim here is not about cutting the pie, but growing the pie. So how do you grow the pie so that if you get a bigger piece, then it's still better than actually cutting a small pie out. And I think startups need to learn this, because I think especially for startups who are entering into partnerships with big companies, they sometimes underestimate the power that they also bring, because they always think the bigger company has more power in negotiation. But actually, that's not necessarily true, because the fact that you are sitting on the table with the big company basically also means that you have something to offer that they want. So you need to value that completely well as well.
Amazing. I'm really amazed. So young PhDs, if you have an idea, keep it. You can bring it to Rajiv, because he's now able to help people out at Aarhus University that come from everywhere, that have a great game idea, to iterate it, to fail it forward, to compost ideas, and to help you with your project as well. And I think there are also some funding lines in future ongoing. Sometimes you have to twist media funding into games.
Yes.
But there are ways, and you show it in real with the crowdfunding campaign now starting in June. Mm-hmm. I think we won't go back to the university challenges. because that's a whole other issue, and I think it's really rounds up really nicely now here with these open prospects. And for the prospects, what would you say are your key learnings in your journey?
So I think the three major learnings have been, and it ties back to my entire growth story as well, is that curiosity is key. So curiosity is key for everything. I think you have to be curious. You have to want to learn. The hunger to learn is more important than anything else, I would say. And for all of you who are, especially nowadays, scrolling a lot on telephones, listening here, I think you need to sometimes pause and think, what are you learning from it? If you are learning something, keep scrolling, then it's fine, because then you're learning new stuff. But if you're just mindlessly doing it, then probably not the best idea.
Use a pen, write something down.
Exactly.
Because it's haptics are important.
Haptics are important, which is why we're doing board games and card games, the tactile element. And it has shown, a lot of research has shown that that's the best way for us to learn. So don't forget that really basic skill. And in the age of AI, this is going to become even more important. Right. So your mind is going to be the most powerful thing that still can keep competing and challenging AI, right? So I would say that, and you need to keep your mind sharp, and therefore think sharp, and be unpredictable also, and that's what's more important. So by being unpredictable, trying different things, being experimental, and that's why. So you experiment and be unpredictable. These are the two things that become very, 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 very cool for you, and that you
so
can do.
Point two now. So we have curiosity, but connected to the second point, playfulness, right?
Playfulness, yes. And this playfulness, you want to bring it through. No, I would say playfulness is the third. The second would be experimentation. So it's experimentation, but for experimentation you need to be playful, because then you can playfully experiment. So these are the sort of three main I would add.
So I allow you a fourth one, because I think that this is also quite important, because it's also embodied in what you're doing. It's the mobility as well, the human mobility, that you have to engage with the world and go out there, right?
Yes. Yeah. You could also add the mobility one, because I think the mobility one is important in terms of, it's again, it's linked to curiosity, because the curiosity is what drives you to go to different places and learn different things. And mobility is one that I think is a bit important for people to understand. It's not enough just to move around if you're not learning, because if you're just traveling and moving and not learning, then it's pointless. So you still have to learn and be curious about the new things, because I've heard a lot of people who talk about, oh, travel is the way to open up your mind, but I've seen many people who travel whose minds don't open. So it's got to do with the fact that openness comes from within, and be willing to trying out different things, and learning, experiencing different cultures, and actually understanding what is it they want to do. I mean, if you just want the same thing in another city, that's not really a new learning.
Yeah, so, you have this. You had this anecdote about Shillong, where your peer said, "Okay, why are you leaving?"
Yeah. I have always had a very good childhood friend of mine basically questioned, why are you leaving? Why don't? And after some years, he connected back to me on Facebook and said, Rajiv, I know you've been traveling a lot, but you know one thing, when you travel a lot, you lose your roots. And he used an English saying. He basically said, a rolling stone gathers no moss. And he basically meant that if you roll so much, you will gather no moss, and therefore you cannot grow anything out of you, because you are just rolling. And it's a known saying. I countered by saying, well, it's the rolling stone that maps the new pathway for the waters to flow. And I think the idea was, if you don't roll, you don't discover new places, you don't discover new options. And I think we need to do that as well. And I think some stones need to roll, and some stones will stay en route. And I think that's how the world is built.
Nice, wonderful ending. Rock and roll. Yeah. You definitely roll. Thank you very much for this amazing interview.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
we could go on. I think there's so much more in the
Mhm.
world of science and innovation and technology and the intersections that you covered and experienced. And we will probably come back on this, and we will meet again for sure.
Yes, for sure. And maybe with new games and new game concepts to share. Great. Thank you very much, Nicholas, for the invite and for the great conversation. I really wish your audience a good time learning and sharing, and feel free to reach out to me for any project idea you have. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Great. So, Rajiv, working with startups from science. See you next time. Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.